So it's been about a month, a little longer, since I actually did my book launch. Jamaal Bethea here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm very proud of this book and I'm very proud of this event. So I'm taking the time now to upload this video. I'm hoping you like it. Share it with somebody. Tell me in the comments what you thought of it. Tell me if you bought the book. Tell me what you thought of the book. Tell me where you are. But I've been meaning to put this video out there for a while. So with no further ado, here is the book, or here's the video from my book launch. Enjoy.
My name is Tony Triumph, and I run a platform and podcast called Building a Better Brand. And so what we do at Building a Better Brand is I've had the privilege of interviewing some of the most successful founders on the planet. Some folks that, you guys may or may have not have heard of, but please take a moment, take out your phone and download Building a Better Brand. We're available on Spotify, Apple, everywhere any major podcast is available for streaming. But today, I have the privilege of speaking to one of the most talented and amazing people that I've known my entire life. The one and only Linwood Jamaal Bethea. And so, yeah. And so today we're going to sit down and talk about some of his wins, some of his losses, and some of the things that's gotten him from point A to point B all the way to Z, as a remnant of his story and his journey. So without further ado, if you're ready, Mr. Linwood Jamaal Bethea, come on out, give it up, y'all.
Hey, y'all. How y'all feeling? Thank you for coming out. I really, really, really appreciate it. This is not just a book launch. This is literally a step in a different direction for my entire life. This is a launching pad. So, so you guys being here means a lot to me. I really, really, really appreciate it. Give it up for Tony again from Build a Better Brand.
Give it up for you and y'all. Happy Black History Month, everybody. And you're here to make history, Mr. Bethea.
Yeah.
J Eagle, as I used to call you.
That is
taking
wow.
it back.
I used to rap, for those who don't know. J Eagle, a long time ago, like a long time ago.
So jumping right in, obviously this book is about sports and a load of things, sports, music. You didn't just come from one world like a lot of folks. You've been privileged enough to come from sports, music, creativity, community, obviously. And so how did all those paths eventually converge into wins, losses, and lessons? And why was this the right time to tell your story?
To be honest, they all converged. Like, you walk different paths in life and you learn different lessons, and they all do different things for you. You know what I mean? At one point in time, music was the dream. Maybe it's not anymore, but my love or knowledge for music doesn't change. I may just use it a different way. When it comes to sports, I played sports my whole life. The first thing I did well was draw. That was the first thing. After that, it was I wanted to go to the NBA. And that was because in my household, back when this was a good thing, I used to see my dad as a mixture of Bill Cosby and Michael Jordan. That was just what I thought of him, right? And he's such a big sports fan, like everybody became a sports fan. You know what I mean? And so with sports, it became like bonding time for family. It wasn't just about sports. But also, it's one of those things, and this is kind of what also inspired the book, where I think in metaphor. So like sports and life, you can literally learn the same things. And so it became a metaphor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm an assistant coach. I coach basketball. The head coach is here with the yellow hat. Like, okay, my dad used to always say, as you get older, you'll learn life is about, can you play with pain? And I used to just be like, all right. But when you really look at life and sports, that's parallel. Because in sports, you don't know who's like, if you watch basketball, they say it's soft nowadays. It's not like it was, not a man's game. But we don't know who has a toe injury that's playing anyway. We don't know who has a knee injury that's been nagging him for years and playing anyway. We don't know. You know what I mean? But all you know is you see them out there giving their all. It's the same thing in life. You don't know who in the cubicle next to you is depressed. Mm-hmm. went through a breakup, lost a family member, but can't afford to take off. So in life, just like sports, you're playing with pain. So it's like the different things I've gone through, the different seasons, it all like converged to basically the same lesson. Can you handle it, kind of, sort of?
That is a great metaphor and analogy to unpack that. And that was a great intro. So that kind of leads into my next question is 10 years. You know, we don't want to say 10 years of pain, but more so 10 years of gain, because it seems like you've gained a lot from the pain of what you went through over these last 10 years. During that time, I would say what was the hardest part of staying committed to the vision? And, you know, what finally told you it's time?
Okay, so I started writing this book 10 years ago. When I first started writing the book, it was called I Say, I See. And it was about a connection between how you talk and what manifests in your life. That was the first iteration of the book. I started writing it. It was a heavy topic. It was big. And at some point, I felt like I needed to live more. And I just was like, I don't have enough to finish this yet. So I stopped. Like 3, 4, 5 years went by, and I just went in my Apple Notes and started reading it again. And then more ideas came. And one of the excerpts I'm going to read is my 4th chapter. The 4th chapter is called Perception is God. Mm-hmm. And I got to that chapter and I was like, I love this. Perception, perception, perception. And all right, cool. So I stopped there. And like another year or 2 or 3 went by, and it popped in my head, you know, delusion is not just a bad thing. I was like, wait a minute, you mean delusion would be a good thing? And so then my next chapter became Be Delusionally Great. And so then I was like, I think I actually want to take this book in a different direction. Instead of I say, I see, no, perception. And that's really what shaped the whole book. It's about characteristics we typically think are positive or negative, but they're neutral. How you use them decides how they show up in your life. So the whole 10 years was living, getting experience, iterating, rethinking, reiterating. And when I graduated school last year, I was graduating with my degree in audio, because y'all know I'm a sound guy. I do audio. But then I felt sports tapping me on the shoulder still, like, no, you still, because I want to talk sports on TV. Like, no, you still have a sports thing here. So I'm back in school for sports broadcasting. But that's what the other part shaped the book, wins, losses, and lessons. I kind of threw the sports spin on it. So the whole 10 years really was just walking, living, learning more, new epiphanies and new downloads to pretty much culminate to now. Why now to push? To be honest, it was more like I'm sick of being afraid. You know what I'm saying? And when you're intelligent, and I actually had one of my OGs, he said, you're hyper intelligent. I was like, am I really that intelligent? But the point is, you analyze and you think all day, every day, 1,000 thoughts per second. And sometimes you think to yourself, okay, if I'm an honest person, I'm objective. If I'm objective, not everybody's special, and that could mean me. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. I'll get a job. I'll just live, da-da-da-da. And then it's those thoughts like, but you are. And it's like, nah. And so then it becomes an issue of, you can't accept that you're special, can you? Not you're not special. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so then you get to the place where it's like, I realized in the last about 5 or 6 months that I had lost hope. That's what I realized in reflection. Like, I really lost hope. And so then it was like, if I hope again, what does that mean? What does that cost me? It costs you risk. It costs you risk of rejection, your ego, your brand, who you are. You know what I mean? If you can't succeed, you may crack intellectually. That's how people go crazy. So it was like, it was safety and not hoping anymore. But what really happened was I just kind of started to hope again.
I can applaud, because that was really good. One thing that you said, yes, you're hyper intelligent. I'll tell you that. I've known you my whole life, but you're also emotionally intelligent. That's a lot of intelligence that people undermine. So, but I want to just spin it back really quick. You said something about delusion. And that's really interesting, because I find delusion to be a very good thing as well, particularly when you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times when you're delusional, you don't have the chance to overthink it or talk yourself out of it. Mm-hmm. So delusion can really lead you down a path of success unintentionally.
Yeah. Right.
Is that something that you possibly experienced throughout your journey?
I'm learning to experience it more. And the second excerpt I'm actually going to read is from my chapter 5 it's a story about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was insanely competitive to the point that he's like 60 and still competitive. Like, sir, you've been retired for like 30 years. Chill out. It's not that deep. Like, come on, man. But the truth of the matter is he played against the Washington Bullets. This was the 90s. And this little rookie named LeBradford Smith scored like 37 points on him. And Michael made up a story that he kind of was like, yeah, nice game, Mike. So just to motivate himself for the next time they played, and Mike dropped like 50. And then later told everybody the story was fake. So what he did is he deluded himself to compete. You know what I mean? And so it's like being intellectual and intelligent, you got to learn to dilute the intellect. Because otherwise, like you said, you're going to think yourself out of it. So that's what I'm learning. For anybody who's a rap fan, T.I. He started in like 2001, didn't do well, but by 2003, put a really good album out. On that album, he had a song called King of the South, which is a big title in hip hop. I'm the best rapper in all of the southern states. He said that in 2003. It's like, you're not even popping like that yet. 3 or 4 years later, when the whole world believed it, then it made sense. But he saw it ahead of time. And sometimes for intelligent people, that's hard to believe because it's like, but the facts say, so what, Jamaal? Yeah, but the facts say, and you think yourself out of it. But being diluting yourself positively can absolutely change everything. Yeah.
Good insights. On what you said, perception is God. I find that title very interesting. So I'm excited to unpack that with you. It's chapter 4, and we're going to let you read your insert. Okay. But that's a bold statement as we sit here in God's house. So what do you mean by that? What does that mean to you? Perception is God.
Well, I might as well crack the book. Yeah. So basically, perception is God. When you think of the idea, what most people consider God to be, is what rules over everything, right? So the whole actual phrase is knowledge is king, but perception is God. That's what I came up with. Because like on earth, kings rule over a certain region or whatever area, but God rules like the earth. And so the metaphor is knowledge is great, but your perception will always override it and color it. So knowledge is king, but perception is God. You could know something, like, I forget what study I read, but the human brain can remember something wrong and genuinely be convinced it was right. And I've had that happen. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's not what happened. And you spend years angry over a perception, basically. You know what I'm saying? So perception is God is because literally, you can literally know information and feel different and not realize that you're off. You're just off. You know what I mean? So that's why it's called perception is God. So I'm going to read this little excerpt right here. It's about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, master of perception. Michael Jordan is widely recognized as the greatest basketball player of all time. But what truly separated him wasn't just his talent, it was perception. Jordan didn't merely believe he was the best. He saw himself as inevitable. Every game, every possession, every matchup existed in a world where he had already won. That wasn't arrogance, it was mental welfare. He used perception as both a shield and a sword, waging battle not just against his opponents, but against complacency itself. And perhaps the best example of his own now legendary encounter with LeBradford Smith for the Washington Bullets during the 1992-93 season. Smith, a quiet second-year guard, had the game of his life, dropped 37 points against the Bulls. The Bulls still won, but that didn't matter to Jordan. The story goes that after the game, Smith told him, "Nice game, Mike." In truth, Smith never said it. Jordan made up the story, a complete fabrication. Why? Because he needed something to feed his fire. The very next night, literally 24 hours later, the Bulls faced the Bullets again. Jordan, fueled by a story of his own invention, erupted for 47 points. By halftime, he had already outscored Smith's total game from the previous night. Later that night, Jordan admitted that he lied about the comment. This was no insult, no trash talk, just his imagination weaponized into obsession. That was the beauty and the madness of his mind. He created friction so he could generate force.
Wow, I was right. And I just got to say, this sounds like a well-written book. So, as a fellow writer, yes, the kudos is already there. But
thank you, man.
As we lean into this a little bit more, how has, as you read that and we reflect on it rather, how has changing your perception changed your outcomes in life?
How is changing my perception? To be honest, for years, people said things to me. You're talented. You can do this. You're magnetic. People draw to you. My perception was like, nah, me? Heck no. Nah, it's not possible. Changing that has allowed the reality to manifest more in my mind, if that makes sense. Changing my perception helped me finish the book because it was like, I deserve to be an author. I can talk. I wax poetically, you know. So changing your perception, it changes your trajectory. You know what I mean? You can have everything you need already and just not believe. Like, the truth is, like, even when I rap for a long time, deep down in the back corner of my brain, I never thought it would work. That perception played out because it didn't. You know what I'm saying? And so looking at stuff like that, it's like, time out. Could that have really worked? I mean, I'm 40 now, so I'm not really like coming out of retirement.
It's never too late.
It's never too late, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But it changing your perception literally just changes your trajectory, honestly.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This is sounding like a very deep and well insightful book. Talk to us a little bit about the process of you writing this book. I know you said it took you 10 years. Were you just typing as you went along on your phone and you have notepads for days and it's got a little bit on the computer and then you got a little bit over here and then you understand movie like, you know.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I worked here for a long time. There were times, you know, let's say pastor was preaching and as a sound guy at that moment, you're not really doing a whole lot. You do the most on like praise and worship, changing the lever. Is they singing? Is it too loud? She's preaching, you're still. So sometimes I would get a thought and just start typing in the phone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But back to the process, it was called I Say I See. I stopped for some years, yada, yada, blase, blase. But when I really got into perception and delusion, I was like, these are neutral things. And so I coined them neutral forces. So the spine of the book became, okay, if I'm going to do a book about neutral forces that you actually control which way they affect your life, what are some other things that are forces that I feel like could be neutral? So there's other chapters in the book like anger and passion. And I talk about the 1966 Texas Western basketball team, true story. It was a coach named Don Haskins who was the first person to start 5 black players in the NCAA championship game, which is college. He was the very first one. Everybody thought he was crazy. But what happened was the black team beat the white team. This is a true story. And that game is literally on YouTube. I watched it 2 weeks ago. They uploaded the whole game in black and white. Everybody thought we were just monkeys, athletic, couldn't jump, couldn't hang with the white guys. And he decided to start 5 black guys. Now, there was a guy named David Lattin, played for that team. He ended up playing for the San Francisco Warriors, which are now the Golden State Warriors. But in the movie, he had gotten kicked out a bunch of games, fouling out, anger, this, that, and the other. They show a clip of pure racism. This white guy trips him, and the referee calls a foul on him. So he explodes in anger, knocking the water cooler over, knocking the chair over, and the coach was like, sit down. Don't you ever let your anger get the best of you like that. And he's like, coach, can't they see he's sticking his knee out? And he said, keep that inside of you. I'll show you when to use it. Championship game. He looked at him, he said, now use that. Go out there, stick your arm in the rim. I don't care if you got to stuff one of them in the rim with you. Make a statement. And so he showed him how to channel the anger and passion into something positive. Mm-hmm. So like, that's really what the process was. Let me figure out what are other things. Love is in here, of course. Peer pressure is in here. Peer pressure can be good or bad. So it became, these are the forces I think mainly control our lives and how they could benefit you or derail you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's deep. That's very actionable, and I think every industry can take knowledge from that. Whether you're pursuing music, fashion, entertainment, whatever, that same scenario happens. I can attest to that. That happens more times than we know. But you also talk about losses, and I want to, we've all experienced a loss in life, and so I think this is unfortunately probably where most of us can relate the most to the book. You write a lot about losses, not just the ones that hurt, but also the ones that change you. What's one loss from the book that completely shifted how you see yourself and or this world?
To be honest, I would say my music career. Because the thing about, so in sports, again, relating it to life, wins are celebrated because you won. But let's say you actually had a bad game. Not everybody reflects on the fact that it was a bad game because all they care about is a win. This happens, we talk about sports debates, Jordan versus this person, and he has 5 rings and he has 6 rings, and that's more than his rings. It's like, but did you really know the details? Sometimes it wasn't even him that was the reason they won. But
now the Ravens still haven't gotten another one since 2013.
The Ravens have had at least 3 teams that should have at least been in a Super Bowl by now.
Amen.
If not won it. But the thing is, wins don't teach you the same thing losses do. When you lose, it's like, all right, something went wrong. There are rare occasions where you did something right, and let's say you auditioned for a movie and they couldn't pick between the two of you, but you killed it. That's a rare occasion where you can't really say you did anything wrong. But most of the time, if you lost, you have to stop and examine, what in the world did I do wrong? You know what I'm saying? And that was what the thing was with my music career. Jamaal, what exactly actually went wrong? Deep down in my subconscious, I never truly believed it would happen. And I was fighting myself the entire time to continue to do it.
How did you figure that out? Most people never have that self-realization.
Just deep reflection. And, I always tell people that in order to grow, you need the opposite of what you are. So if you're an extrovert, typically you become internal and quiet and thoughtful. If you're an introvert, like I always use my sister as an example. Some people meet her and can't tell she's an introvert because through process and business and time, she learned how to be extroverted. But that's growth. You know what I mean? So it really was just a lot of quiet, deep reflection time. When my mom started this church, I was 14. I'll be 40 this year. My sister went to college that year because I was going into the 10th grade. My older sister lived with her mom at the time. And my parents, they were either at the church or gone. So I was alone a lot. So I just honestly had a lot of alone time to reflect. Like I later in adulthood learned what happens when you're alone, your subconscious kind of starts doing this with some of those things. I didn't know that at like 15, but that's what was happening. I started to just think a lot and reflect a lot. And, you talk about like Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. That's hard for most people because it crushes their own self-image. But if you truly want to grow, you got to look in the mirror. And after my divorce in 2011, 12, I really started visiting the mirror on a regular basis. And that was at the time, it just was like, okay, what went wrong? Not her, you. Because when you break up with somebody, divorce somebody, they could have 2 million issues. Fine. What did you do wrong? And so that's really what it was, a lot of deep reflection and a lot of, if I'm really a real person and I'm really going to accept the truth, I got to be able to accept whatever I'm about to hear about myself that I did. And that'll come from your subconscious. It don't have to come from other people. So it really was that. And I remember one time I was like, I'm going to start letting the truth be the truth and just see how I feel. Sometimes you notice you don't really feel different. It's just our emotions sometimes protect us so much. Just let it. It's fine. You know what I mean? So it was just deep reflection time.
Yeah, that's maturity. Would you say that age also played a role in that as well?
Yeah, because there have been several times that, I'm mature. I've always been called mature, but 40 mature, different than like 25 mature. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, like time definitely is a part of that as well. You get more experiences, you get more time to reflect, you get more time to think. you know what? I might have actually been wrong in that one. Like all of that kind of stuff, it just starts to really settle the more you have experiences.
My next question is changing the subject a tad bit. Peer pressure, identity versus influence, and this is very. I feel like this is what the generation now that's coming up behind us, millennials, the Gen Zs. That's where they kind of had this bait and switch issue. But in this chapter, in one chapter rather, you talk about peer pressure. You talk about how easy it is to lose yourself trying to belong. Everybody can relate to that to some degree. But again, we've been around long enough to know when it's happening and when it's not.
Right.
So I think, again, this chapter is really going to help the ones coming behind us. Looking back, how did peer pressure shape you early on, and what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to stay true to themselves right now?
How did peer pressure shape me early on? So basically, I'm a pastor's kid. Big surprise, right? But deeper than being a pastor's kid, my family's always been viewed as like an excellent standard. So literally, my mom taught in Baltimore County for 18 years. So I was Miss Bethea's son. She's now been a pastor for 26, so I'm Pastor Karen's son. So when you grow up with a certain standard and honestly in a shadow with expectations, it shapes you. And two-parent household, 2 kids, Christian household, not crazy devout, but just very strict about it. And then you start going to school with people who are doing all of the complete opposites. Everything you can name, anything, they doing it. And one thing about humans is we are literally built to travel in tribes. It's deeply psychological. So sometimes with kids in particular, it's not that they don't understand that the crowd they're hanging with is wrong. They just want to belong. And it's really that deep, because what human don't want to belong? And so as a kid, it was easy to try to belong. Like NWA came out in 1987? And ever since then, black men have felt like they had to be tough to prove something. Still to now. When you go to school with a bunch of that, you're not even worried about being that. You'll be that to just be with them. It's really that deep. You know what I'm saying? And so learning how, if you stand over here by yourself and it's a crowd over here, that's lonely at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the person who can learn to stand there content, looking at them like, nah, they actually crazy over there, that's when you really grow. You know what I'm saying? The advice I would really give to anybody, because one thing I've learned is as you age, you grow at different levels, and not everybody that's 30, 40, 50 is mature. So it's not even just kids, but it's just be willing to sit still and deeply reflect. That's my advice for especially kids, because I work at a middle school now, alternative middle school. And I'll talk to these kids all the time about their behaviors, and they hear me, but they're used to just behaving the way they behave. And I'll say to them, you got an attitude. You're not in class today. You're in alternative school. Don't you want to get out of here? You know what I mean? Like, you need to really think about this. You're coming to alternative school with the same behaviors that got you kicked out. Don't you want to get out of here? And I don't think there's many people in their lives doing that kind of stuff, which is part of why they're here in the first place. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because I worked at a middle school a couple of years ago, and I had a little desk in the hallway. And they would look at me crazy because kids would literally get their classwork and sit along the wall and do work at my station in the hallway. And the principal surprisingly was like, well, if it works, then that's fine. We'll support you in that effort. I'm like, oh, okay. One time I had 7 kids.
Wow.
So I told my new job in one of our meetings, we have a meeting every day at work. Hey, you can put a desk next to my desk, and if kids need to come sit out, that's fine. Now, sometimes I'll be like, I should have told them that.
Right.
Hey, can so-and-such come sit with you? Sure.
It sounds like you might have found your calling through this whole process, though, and it seems like it's drawn the children to you a lot more. Was that intentional with this? Well, not intentional. Was that something that you expected through this process of just of finding your next chapter? And because I've known you my whole life. You were a rapper. into sports, and we were just talking before we came out here. I think the ducks are aligning, finally, and that's a really rich sentiment to process. Is that, let's unpack that a little bit more. Is that what you were expecting, and how does that make you feel at this point of your journey?
Yeah. I've always understood journey and process and purpose. So like, I forget who I told this. I was like, probably was my daughter, because me and my daughter talk like best friends. I was like, it should have hit me years ago that I should have been working in the public school system. I don't know why it didn't hit me years ago. I've worked with kids forever. Some of my favorite movies are high school movies. I love the atmosphere of school. Teachers, peers, sporting events. Like, you have a good game and it's like the gym is rocking. It's nothing like that. Mm-hmm. Seeing kids again in the morning. Like, I love that. You know what I mean? And going into this school year, I didn't even know. I was working at Amazon driving trucks and I enjoyed it. But I wanted to get back in Baltimore County. I love the schedule, for 2 o'clock every day. You know what I mean? And I wanted to be freed up after that to have time to coach. I just didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. But my head coach called me with a job. And so it was like, good. I got back in Baltimore County. Now I can coach. So it shaped everything, because it's like, I love basketball. I love kids. It's gratifying to be able to work in Baltimore County with these kids, literally go around the corner and coach basketball for these kids. You know what I mean? That's big for me, especially because like in the Black community, 50, 60 years ago, 25% of Black homes were single parent. Now it's 75, which means 3 out of every four homes in the Black community don't have a dad in it. That's staggering. And I've always been able to relate I call myself a peer-to-peer communicator. I can talk to a 5-year-old and have a dope conversation. I can talk to an 85-year-old and have a dope conversation. I just can talk to anybody. So people always attracted me. I saw 2 kids in the mall the other day. Oh, what's up, Unc? What's up, Unc? I'm Unc to them. Okay, so if I'm Unc, let me really talk to you then.
Yeah, again, I think you found your calling. Just a few more questions before we wrap up and get to the book signing. In chapter 6, you talk about anger and passion. Mm-hmm. You draw an important line between anger and passion in this chapter. So I want to kick this question off in 2 parts. First question is, why did so much anger exist?
Expectation, immature emotions. You know what I mean? Expectation kills appreciation is like one of my favorite phrases. You know what I mean? Anger exists, not being heard. That was always a big thing for me, just not feeling heard. You know what I mean? But the more you travel, the more you talk to people, you realize you think different. Of course, you're not being heard. You know what I mean? So it takes time to unpack and unravel all of that. But just different things, being the goody two-shoes kid didn't feel good.
You weren't that good. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, it's the truth.
I'm just messing with you. You were the good kid.
People thought, like, oh, he the goody two-shoes kid. You know what I mean? That didn't feel good. Being the kid who didn't feel the need to be tough to prove manliness didn't feel good, because everybody else did. To this day, I have friends that are like that. Most of my male homeboys are hypersexual. I'm not. That's weird. What, he gay? All of that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of perceptions from people and expectations you didn't ask for. It make you angry. It just makes you angry. Like, yo, what is wrong with people? You know what I mean? But also what happens from childhood to adulthood, you realize, the world's kind of screwed up and messy. Because as a kid, you get told certain things that you realize, yeah, that's not actually true, is it? If you be good to people, they'll be good to you. That is literally not true. It doesn't change the fact that you should be good, but it doesn't guarantee any response at all, quite frankly. And so that's what it was. It was a lot of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Especially being a pastor's kid. Like, I was always proud of my mom. Like, I never had any animosity, anger, nothing, church, gone a lot. I never did. But people, oh, you a pastor's kid? Oh, you probably the worst. All of the stereotypes and all of the stuff, you just be like, just shut up. Like, shut up. Learn me. But
Right.
People ain't gonna do that. They gonna stereotype.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, that definitely answers, and that's highly relatable. In terms of the anger, how did you learn to stop letting the anger drive you and start letting passion lead instead?
So here's the thing. I'll go back to T.I. T.I. had, I wasn't a fan of T.I. at first. I thought he couldn't rap. I thought he was too country. But he put an album out in 2003 called Trap Music. On this album, he had a song called T.I. versus T.I.P. T.I.P. was his actual stage name, but he ended up signing a deal with Atlantic. And they also had Q-Tip signed at the time. So out of respect for Q-Tip, he dropped the P. That's how he became T.I. So then T.I. resembled this famous, wealthy, successful musician. T.I.P. represented street dude. So in the song T.I. versus T.I.P., he literally is arguing back and forth with himself, rhythmically and rhyming. Nah, you just soft. Nah, you just scared. Like all of this different stuff. And by the end of the song, the last line is, how many people are real enough to get themselves straight? So literally after that song, I was like, that's pretty crazy. So I started thinking like that. All right, Jamaal, you feel like this, but what's real? That. See how they don't match? Yeah. And so you start to kind of, you know what I mean? Like I always tell a story of when my daughter was 4 years old and she was just being a kid, rambunctious, running around, whatever, just being a kid. She asked me some question and I was frustrated about my life, not even her. And I just snapped. I was like, man, go over there. God, grief. And she just hung her little head and walked in the corner. And my mom was just like, you should be careful. This is an important relationship. You don't want some boy being able to, you don't want her to be easy because you didn't establish a relationship right. I was like, okay. So I tucked her in bed. Luckily at 4 years old, her memory is this long. She forgot. When I told her that story, she got older. Of course, she didn't remember. But I tucked her in the bed and I went in my room and I did the T.I. versus T.I.P. I sat there and I was like, okay, what are you really frustrated about? I'm frustrated I'm not further along in my music career and I wish I was out touring. Not that I don't want to be with my kid, I love her. All right, cool. And so the other side of me was like, is that her fault? Right. I was like, no, actually, it's not her fault. So the other side of me was like, okay, how do you feel about her? I was like, I wanted a daughter. Most men want sons. I wanted a daughter. She's incredible. She's everything I ever wanted. The other side of my brain was like, then treat her like that. That's a really good point. And literally from that moment on, I stopped letting whatever I was feeling impact my parenting. That's not her fault.
Right.
She's here because you know why she's here. This is literally not her fault.
Right.
So why are you frustrated about that and snapping at her? No.
Right.
And from that moment on, I learned to literally do this and do that. These are my feelings, but this is what's true. And I sit back and I look at both. So after a while, it's like some things are goofy to be angry about if you really understand what's going on. And if you can't control it, what you mad about? Control what you can control.
Right. Right. Now, I'm sure that's going to save a lot of frustrated parents out there who might have had that same scenario happen. Because I do, coming particularly from the arts and entertainment world, I've seen a lot of resentful parents who are upset because either they had to leave their child, and it's a different end of the spectrum, or they can't go because they have their child to care for. So I know that, I'm sure you've unpacked that a lot more in the book, but I know that's going to save a lot of people who feel frustrated about that in that same way.
Yeah, I really hope so.
As we come to a close, are we doing a Q&A? Or are we just on the book signing?
We can do a Q&A. It's not a bad idea.
I don't know how we are on time, but my last question, this is just about your season. We talked a little bit about, finding your calling, and, I think you found your calling, obviously. This is your first book, certainly not your last, I hope.
Correct.
You already have more coming, I know, down the pipeline. The way this one sounds, I know it's got to be a part 2 in the mix or something.
I already have 2 other books done.
Amazing.
They're just not coming out yet.
Right. Let's get this one a bestseller first, and then we'll see how that goes.
This one's some time, right?
But how do you define this current season of your life? And what do you want people to understand about where you are now, and what do you want them to take from it?
Rebirth is definitely a rebirth season. It's a pushing season. It's a scaling season. One of my coworkers, is funny. I was sharing with him the book and showing it to him and everything, and it was funny because I was just like, what do you think of this graphic? And just he even instantly kind of like spotted my trajectory. He was like, "Oh man, you working on all of that? That's awesome. You're not even gonna be here that long, man. I like you. You're a cool guy." But rebirth. The older you get, things look different. And it's funny because working with the kids, I remember thinking 30 years old was old. You how old? Dang. I remember feeling like my teacher 31? Ew. And now I'm the 40-year-old. You know what I mean? And got the little, so Mr. B, how old are you? 40. For real? You funny. You know what I'm saying? But one thing I learned is that one of my issues with myself is I was judging myself according to my own expectation and not reality. A lot of men finally land at 40. A lot of men finally land at 40. Doesn't mean you can't before that. But I kept feeling like the older I get, I'm behind. And the more research I did, it's like, actually, I'm kind of on time. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So when I say rebirth, it don't matter how old you are. Never be afraid to reinvent. Mm-hmm. Never be afraid to start over. Take an idea that you had, reshape it. Never be afraid to do that. You know what I mean? So this is a rebirth. I can honestly say belief, effort, idealism, this is probably the height. And it's going to go much higher than this. Mm-hmm. But I just want people to watch what's going to happen. We talked about some other stuff I have going on. Just watch what's going to happen. So I would say this is a strong rebirth. And the years of second guessing myself, not even really being mad at other people, but mad at me for shortchanging me. Mm-hmm. That's done. Mm-hmm. Like all of that's out the window. So it's rocket ship ride this time.
I love it. Let's give it up, y'all. For Jamaal Bethea, wins, losses, and lessons.